Live. Got it. Yeah, we haven't been here together in a while, so
Right.
long time no talk
It's been a
for
minute.
me.
What a
Um,
good what a good intro too to like what we're going to talk about today of just getting back into things.
exactly. And I was kind of putting some thought into this, and I've talked to Alessia about this quite a bit, but I've always kind of struggled to, I feel like my eye looks like I have way more makeup on the side just because it's so dark over here. So we're gonna get better lighting. I've always struggled with showing up here, wherever, like as a sort of public figure, coach, business owner, whatever, when I don't feel like I'm at my best. And I know, because I talk to you about this, I talk to clients about this, nobody has the expectation that you should be on your game all the time, but it's always like, even in my personal relationships, I feel sometimes like I have a hard time showing up when I feel like I'm struggling. I'm like, ooh, people don't need that version of me. Like, I'll spare them, figure it out, get back to the version of me that I feel like everybody wants and deserves, and then I'll, and that's a bigger conversation. But we have both been in a little bit of a, me more so, honestly, just with like everything. And I was talking on Instagram yesterday about how, like, when you're in a rut, it kind of just carries out into everything else. Like, it just sort of bleeds out into other areas. And I've definitely noticed that in my own even training and my own macro tracking getting kind of sloppy. But mostly it was extending to like social media and content creation, and just feeling like ugh about all of those things and feeling like everything was hard. So I know probably a lot of you guys listening have experienced that in your own fitness journeys, in your own relationships, in your own life, in your businesses, whatever it is. Let's talk about going through a rut, getting out of a rut, because one of my favorite sayings, and we usually, this is like a festival saying, if you've ever been on a multi-day bender with your friends and you're like, okay, the only way out is through, is the same thing for being in a rut. Sometimes the only way out is through. And while there are definitely things that like I've done that you can do that we think are good for kind of like building that momentum again and maybe building that excitement again, there's also like the first thing I want to talk about is like normalizing that ruts happen and that progress is never going to be linear. Nothing is going to be linear. And I think people hear that and they're like, yeah, I know the scale's not always going to be going down. True. But neither your strength's not always going to be going up, your motivation's not always going to be going up, your desire to do this isn't always going to be going up. And those things are going to kind of ebb and flow and fluctuate. But I think we have this sort of instant gratification mindset as a society, in my opinion, where, if something starts to feel hard, we're like, I'm out. This must not be the right thing for me. I quit. And, I would say like you wouldn't do that if you were like in a long-term partnership, in a marriage, whatever, but some people do. But I do think like we can normalize that in like, in marriages, in businesses. Like, not every single month is going to be bigger and better than your last month. If you are a business owner, like, there are going to be stalls, there are going to be stagnations, there are going to be times when it feels hard. That doesn't mean quit. That means figure out ways to keep going through and kind of pull yourself back out the other side. So for me, that was kind of something that I wanted to talk about first. And like what I've been talking about with clients is like normalizing that ruts are going to happen. They are going to happen. I don't care if you think you're the most motivated person in the world, the most disciplined person in the world. That shit is going to happen in a lot of different areas.
And also, you can be the most disciplined and motivated person. It's knowing the difference of your circumstances, right? Like, your circumstances can change, and all of a sudden, what motivated you before, or what came effortless to you before, is no longer there. But that's where the growth happens, is where you're able to pivot and go, okay, kind of like what you were saying about going through, in order for me to get to the other side of this, I think I have to do something differently than what I've been doing because my circumstances have changed.
Yeah.
I always relate this back to jobs, because whether it's you own your own business or anything that you have to be self-motivated or, like self-aware about, people always struggle with that because they don't have anyone telling them what to do. Or, there's only like a certain level of accountability that you can hold yourself to before it's somebody else. So I always relate it back to like, okay, you didn't feel like doing this today, but how many times do you not feel like going to work, but you go anyway because you're hardwired to and you've programmed yourself to know that You don't have an option. Not saying like, okay, you're sick, you take a mental health day, that's one thing, but you don't just go to work because you didn't feel like going to work. Because you know that there would be repercussions. So put that same level of responsibility on yourself with certain things, but at the same time is like it's like finding that balance of giving yourself grace. And like, I'll use me as an example. Came home from Vegas, was exhausted, and I typically would just power through. And then the exhaustion would catch up to me. And then a week later, I'd be like, why am I sick? Or why don't I feel good? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to come home. I'm going to rest. And after like 2-3 days of resting, I felt recharged. So think about like a battery pack or your phone. You plug it in, you charge it. But if it's off, you have to power it back on. So like after 3 days, I was like, okay, I'm recharged, but like I still just feel like meh. Well, because I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't walking, I wasn't getting myself out there, it wasn't going on social media. So I was just like, I'm recharged, but I'm not putting that recharged energy towards anything. And that's where you can kind of feel stuck or like in that rut where you're like, I don't now know what direction to go in because like, I think I'm tired, but I'm not tired, but I'm not unmotivated. I'm not really sure. It's like, you have to just start doing something. And I saw this quote literally 5 minutes before we were popping on. I'm like, I don't believe in coincidences at all, ever. My friend Brooke actually posted this and she said, how to get unstuck. Oh, so good. Stop taking action in accordance with your current circumstances and energy levels and start taking action in accordance with who you are and where you want to be.
I love that.
Like, cool. You know, taking where you're at right now. We can obviously give some specific examples of like what we're doing, but taking where you're at right now and be like, okay, I can acknowledge that I'm here. And if you're someone who's ever tried to accomplish anything in your life, you're going to get stuck at some point. So you have to like get comfortable knowing that that's going to happen. And then saying to yourself, how much longer do I want to like stay here? And where do I want to propel myself to? But you can't propel yourself if you really don't ever get stuck.
Yeah. And I think for the example, like, we talked about showing up for your job. Yeah, that's like sort of a requirement. You show up because you have to, it's an obligation, it's a responsibility, etc. But when we're talking about like fitness journeys or owning your own business or like relationships that maybe you feel like you're there by obligation, but I was kind of talking about this with like, okay, the example of being like, all right, you're married for 30, 40, 50 years. You're probably going to have years that are hard and you're not getting along and that don't feel exciting anymore. And that you're just like, not really like, fuck, this is hard. Every day is like not as exciting as it used to be. And then you're going to have years that are amazing and wonderful and you're, whatever. And it's the same thing for fitness journeys and seasons of your life. I have a lot of clients who come in super motivated and the mindset is like, okay, I'm committing to this for 6 months. So that means the expectation is that the next 6 months, I need to be on. I need to be perfect. I need to give this my 100%. And, everyone's like, I want to give it my 100%. I'm like, that's great. That's great effort level wise. However, we also need to probably understand that like, there's no finish line, when it comes to your fitness journey. So we have to be expecting and kind of ready for periods of time where things don't feel as good. They don't feel as exciting. You're like, I'm going to do it anyways, but I don't really want to go get my stupid steps today. I don't really want to track my stupid macros today. I don't really want to have a protein shake to hit my goals today. And like, that's okay. And we need to just, again, like not be super hard on ourselves about like, oh, why don't I I lost my mojo. It's like, it's been like 2 weeks. You haven't lost your mojo. You're just in a little bit of a funk and guess what? They end. And I tell my clients this all the time. I'm like, there's like peaks and valleys to anything, right? What you have to understand is if you're in like the bottom right now, you're in a little bit of a dump. The only way to go is up, right? Like the rut will end. Where are you going to be when that rut ends? Because I think something that people do commonly is, they hit a little bit of a plateau or a little bit of a stall, or like you said, kind of a sticking point in their fitness journey. And they're like, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing right now. Maybe I just don't want to do it. I don't have the motivation. Maybe I just stop going to the gym. Maybe I just go back to my old ways because that feels easier, because in times of higher stress or resistance, we're going to lean back to the path of least resistance, right? And that's not necessarily what needs to happen. Like I tell people all the time, like, where do you want to be when the rut ends? Like when you do hit that upswing of motivation again and fire and drive and you're excited again and that passion is reignited, where do you want to be, right? Like you don't want to be where you were starting. So a lot of times, like something that like the mindset that you could be in to help with this is like, what non-negotiables can I do during this period of like ruddiness to make sure that when this ends and I have higher levels of energy and drive and motivation and zest again, that I'm starting from where I was when the rut started and not starting from where I was at the beginning of my fitness journey. And that's something with, a lot of clients who've gone through hardships, hard chapters, hard seasons, whatever, is like, they're like, oh, I just really haven't been showing up for myself, and I'm like, okay, but we don't know, maybe you're dealing with like the illness of a family member. Maybe you're dealing with a big move. Maybe there's a lot of like big life things happening. Those things can take, life's going to happen anyways. Life is passing by. Where do you want to be when that rut ends? If this takes a year for you to get out of this hard time that you're in your life, what's going to happen if you just don't do anything for the next year? You're going to be starting the next season of motivation from ground zero again. So what I usually try to tell clients is I'm like, there's definitely tactical things that I think we can do to kind of like re-energize you. However, we need to be in the mindset of like, progress is going to look different during this season, and progress can be maintenance. Maintaining the progress I've made up to this point during this season of life where I'm just kind of feeling meh about everything is progress. Maintaining the progress you've made with very little to no motivation is progress. And again, this season will end. And when you inevitably get that, like, oh, I'm amped again, I'm starting a new thing, I'm really excited, I'm going to give it my all. Where do you want to start that from? Probably not from a place of not doing anything for the next year or whatever. So that's kind of like the mindset that I've kind of had in this little season too, is like, I'm going to keep doing my non-negotiables because I don't want to backslide. I'm okay with staying where I am. Right. I'm okay with making the same amount of money I made last year, last month, whatever. I'm okay with not lifting heavier weights. I'm okay with not losing another pound this month. I'm okay with staying exactly where I am this month, but I don't want to backslide, right? Like I don't want to start from ground zero. I don't want to throw all this out the window and then feel like a newbie the next time I get into the gym, or, gain a bunch of weight back or whatever it is. Like I don't want to find myself in a place where everything feels harder and I feel like I'm starting over. So I'm going to pick out the things that are like, these things will make the biggest difference and keep me moving forward. But something that like I always try to take inventory of is a lot of times when we're in a rut, again, it kind of permeates into other areas. So if you're being sloppy in one area, you're probably being sloppy in multiple. Pick the path of least resistance. Which of those things is going to be the easiest for you to change? For me, I can look around at my environment and tell where I'm at with everything else. When we first moved into this place, I was cleaning every single day, partially because my boyfriend is a slob, but also because I just really like to have a clean environment when I'm trying to show up as a boss ass bitch business owner. So if you look around and your space is cluttered, you have laundry piling up for a week, you have dishes in the sink, you're leaving little easy tasks. Like I can always tell them like, have I kicked the can on just like calling the pharmacy to see if my prescription is ready? Like it's little really, have I booked my flight for that next thing I'm taking? Like look around and kind of take inventory. First thing I would say, recommend to everyone is like declutter and clean and organize your space, your environment. If that's your work desk, if that's your room, if that's your car, whatever it is, like it's really hard to feel like you're on top of your shit and show up for yourself in an environment that feels chaotic.
Yep. Also, too, it gives you that little sense of accomplishment. So you're like, okay,
exactly.
I did one thing, and that builds, right? Like sometimes we think of all the things that we need to do that maybe we've been putting off, or it's like this daunting, massive task list that you want to do, and you see that and it overwhelms you, and you have analysis paralysis. You're like, oh my God, forget it. Like, I'm not going to do this. But if you're like, you know what, I'm just going to straighten up my office today, and that's it. That's what I'm going to do today. That will actually grow and build and create more where you're like, well, I'll just like put my socks away. Well, then I'll just put the rest of the laundry away. And you just keep doing it and doing it instead of looking at that big task list and trying to like figure out how you're going to get it all done in one shot. And I liked what you said too, because this is something that we had talked about yesterday, was like, I was kind of shying away from social media. I mean, literally, because I was in bed for 3 days too. So I was like, do people actually want to see me in bed? Like, maybe not. But I'm like, I could have shared other things. But I was like, you know what? For the little energy that I do have, I have I have other obligations that still need to get done, that I'm going to divert my energy there. So going back to what you were saying about, staying status quo with certain things, like I'm just going to do the bare minimum in the gym. Maybe I won't push for a PR this week, or I'm just going to at least aim to hit my protein, because that's always the hardest one, right? That's like, if you just dicked around, you would probably not hit your protein.
Yeah.
Well, maybe like we would probably, but if you're new to macro tracking, usually not. But what you don't realize is in those things that you are just kind of keeping status quo because your energy is somewhere else, something else is happening. So maybe like for you, it was dealing with like something emotional last week that you had to deal with in a different way, that just was taking a lot more energy out of you than you probably thought it would. So that energy couldn't go into pushing in the gym. So it's like, it might not be something you can measure necessarily, but something is being redirected and you're having some kind of growth in some way, even if the things that you would measure, like something on the scale, your gym progress, whatever, that can be measured and you can actually see the growth. You can't tangibly, I can't look at you and go, I think you had growth last week because you like went through something. I mean, maybe you can, people get like glowy, but somewhere something is evolving, even if it's not a personal goal at that moment or something like that. It literally could be like a marriage conversation or a family conversation or whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think that's something I talk to clients about too, is, when they're going through something that is more or greater or more difficult or, whatever, more challenging than their normal life, right? They're like, oh, I don't know why I couldn't do this week. I really just couldn't get into the gym. I just like didn't have the energy. I was so exhausted. I don't know why. And I'm like, well, I can tell you why. Is, you're thinking of your energy as only being physical, when
Right.
in reality, like if you are stressed, if you are worrying, if you are anxious, if you are mentally preoccupied, all of those things take energy. They zap your energy. So, instead of just thinking, oh, I slept okay, and like I didn't really do that much physical activity, okay, but like, where was your energy going? Because, if your pool normally is, let's say 80%, because like you just have a young kid and so you don't sleep perfect all the time, we got 80% to give, cool. If 50% of that energy that you have was going towards something mental, emotional, psychological, like you just had other shit that you're dealing with, then that leaves you with only this pool of 30%. If that, you have to use your energy that you have, we got to budget it, kind of sparingly at that point. So I think there's definitely a difference, right, between like giving yourself grace and giving yourself excuses. However, even if you don't think you had a reason to be in a rut, right? Like, again, look around and kind of take inventory of things that are kind of falling in your life. Again, for me, it's like the stupid tasks and like my housework, right? So those are going to be the things that I'm like, I might not be able to record a podcast episode today and, make content for next week and, do, outreach to new clients, whatever. But you know what I can do that will make me feel better? Again, like a lot of times I tell clients, like if we're trying to build momentum, start with the hardest thing first thing in the morning, right? Like get something done that's going to make you feel empowered and like motivated and like accomplished. If you're just struggling to do the bare minimum right now, like figure out what the easiest things are that can kind of help you build momentum. So again, if it's like, I'm just going to clean my car, I'm going to clean out my car, whatever. I'm going to make sure there's no dishes and, whatever. Pick those things where you can kind of like feel a little bit more organized in your life, like get your groceries, and change your goals for that season of life. Like your goals are allowed to change. And if you have, just realized that maybe your motivation is lower because you just don't quite care as much about fat loss, that's also okay. And I think people are scared to say that their goals and priorities have changed. Like that somehow makes them less than because they no longer want to lose 20 pounds. They just want to like feel good and enjoy their life. Like your goals are allowed to change in your different seasons. And so I think really asking yourself too, like, am I in a rut or have I just changed my priorities, and getting really honest with yourself about that, because it's going to be very hard to continue to push yourself to act in alignment with things that are not actually like things that you are trying to call in. So again, like if you're actually like, yo, I'm in a rut, I still want to do all these things, I still care about all of this is still important to me, I just can't get my shit together. It's like, give yourself a little bit of permission to not have your shit together for a period of time, but tell yourself, I'm not going to live here. I'm not going to stay here. This will end, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of breathing room and a little bit of grace to like kind of reignite this fire. I'm going to clean my environment. I'm gonna like make myself some healthy meals. Because we all know that eating fast food, drinking alcohol stuff sucks your energy. I'm going to take inventory again of the places where maybe I have energy leaks. Is it a toxic relationship? Is it a toxic friendship? Is it a toxic work environment? Where is your energy leaking that normally it's those, are maybe more plugged? Because I think that's something that we forget about too, is like just not realizing that maybe being involved in some toxic workplace drama or friendship drama or family drama or whatever is like kind of sucking your energy a little bit, right? So take
And
inventory of your whole environment, right? Your physical environment and your emotional and mental environment. Like which things in your life are charges and which things are drains. If going for a walk with your dog is a charge, do more of that. If certain friends are a drain, you don't have to cut them out of your life completely, but like give yourself some space from them.
right. And it was funny too, because I don't remember, I think it was Thursday. I like crawled into bed and I was like physically sick too. But so I was laying in bed and I'm like, "Ugh, okay, like let me just relax." And then I found myself scrolling on social media and I'm like, okay, if I was this sick, I wouldn't be doing this. So let me actually rest. And like I always use this example because I feel like you've said it. Like again, give yourself credit for the work that you're doing. If I'm gonna rest, I need to be in bed and resting. Scrolling social media is energy sucking. Even if you think it's passive, because it's so passive, it can be. So I literally threw my phone across the room. I don't think I looked at my phone for like a day and a half. Like I had people calling my husband being like, "Is Alessia okay? She's not answering our text." My percentage of my screen time was down 57%.
Wow.
Like what? 57%. So it's little things like that again, you don't, because they're so passive, like a conversation with a friend or a really annoying group chat or whatever it might be, because they're so passive, you're like, there's no way this is what's contributing to me feeling this way. But it really can be those little things that just build up, and they actually suck life out of you versus adding into it. And I think this is also why consistency is important, is because, okay, so between me getting home from Vegas, which was 2 weeks ago, and now I've probably been to the gym collectively like 5 times in 2 weeks. Normally I'd be going, it would be like 8 times. Well, it's still better than not doing anything. I didn't say, well, fuck it, and I'm just not going to go at all until I feel 110% and everything will be aligned and everything will be perfect. It's still better than what I would have done probably a few years ago. But because when you have that little bit of still consistency in you, you're like, I'll just do the bare minimum. If it just means I go twice this week, then I'm going to go twice this week, and that's fine. But it's better than me saying, man, I forgot, I'm not going to go at all. Like that pendulum kind of swinging too. So when you build consistency in your task list or those little things, you don't have to do every single thing, but if you do a little bit of them, like you said, when you come out of it, you're not going to feel like, gosh, now I'm starting from complete ground zero. And that can actually make you not feel so good.
Yeah, I love what you said too about like if you're gonna do it, like
Do
it.
it.
If you actually need rest, if you are actually burnt out, actually rest because it's only gonna drain you further to be like I was same thing. I was kind of off social media and like my screen time was also down like 50%. And I was like,
It's scary.
if I'm not in a place of creation and value and connection and sharing, why am I going to be in a place of consuming? Like that's going to drain me more than anything, to be on this app every single day, seeing people create things while I'm just over here being like, I should be doing this. It's like, no, like I should either decide to do it and stay consistent with it, or I should actually say, if I'm saying the reason I can't do this is because I'm really burnt out on social media, then take a break from it. you
right.
know?
Like actually take that break, right?
Yeah. And like I think for me, like something that never falls by the wayside is my workouts. Like that's just not a thing that I ever, even when I'm in a rut, I still go, but the rut is different. It's like I'm just no longer feeling like I'm performing at a super high level. I'm not hitting PRs. I don't feel that fire, but I still do it. But it's easy to do because this is a maintenance thing for me at this point, which is why if you are still in the place of developing habits, this can feel really hard. If you developed these habits and stay consistent with it for a couple of years, no matter what happens, you're going to be able to kind of just like lean on those non-negotiables and just kind of push through. With clients and their diet, it may be like, okay, hey, if we really are burnt out on tracking macros, we're going to take a break from tracking macros, but I want you to make all of your meals at home and still aim for 2 to 3 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, because you're going to see very quickly, it's like, okay, if I'm doing that and nothing changes really about my diet, it was just the act of looking at numbers and plugging things in and being on my screen, then like we're confirming that and we're still doing the non-negotiables and the things that we need to do. However, if it is not that, right, like we're going to find out what it is. If it's, we're, going out to eat all the time and wanting to, that's a different thing. So I think you kind of have to also identify too, like, okay, what do I actually need a break from? What am I actually finding is draining me? Again, kind of taking inventory. And there, like I said, there's different things you can do. Like you can still move your body and not get all of your workouts in. I have a client who's kind of in one of those places right now. And so we set same thing, goals of, okay, make 90% of your meals at home, hit your 3 servings of fruits and vegetables, and you're going to get 3 workouts in. They're just not going to be in the gym. They're going to be outdoors. You're going to go hiking. You're going to go to a dance class. You're going to go to a Pilates class, like just movement for the sake of doing it. And then figuring out, what really is the issue. It's okay to take breaks. It's not okay or probably good for you to completely throw everything out the window and abandon everything and backslide and then feel worse when you start over, because that's just going to kind of create this vicious cycle. So I think, again, the biggest thing is like recognizing that when a rut happens, it doesn't mean that you need to quit what you're doing. It just means you need to change. If I quit my business, every time I hit a place where I felt stuck or frustrated or stalled, we would not be here, right?
Literally.
I only got less anxious about it when I realized that this was just kind of a cycle that I'm going to go through, and that everyone who's an entrepreneur is going to go through. It's also what you're going to go through if you are on a fitness journey. Like you're going to have periods of time where even if you are a coach, even if you are a fitness influencer, hitting your stupid protein goals and going to the gym for a couple of weeks is going to feel hard and it's going to feel not fun. And you're going to be like, oh, I don't want to do this. Again, it's like, it's not saying, hey, I need to expect the same level of performance from myself every single day, because we are, first of all, women and not robots. So we're going to go through cyclical changes anyways. Thinking that you should have the exact same level of drive, motivation, performance, execution, focus every single day, every single week, every single month is insane. So take it day by day, take it week by week. I know, because I've been through this enough now. I'm like, when I hit these little ruts, it's going to be probably 2 or 3 weeks. And then guess what? I'm going to come out the other side. And for 2 or 3 months, we're going to be on fire. Bang, bang, bang. We capitalize on that momentum when we have it, right? I always try, like when I feel very fired up, feel very aligned, I'm like, yeah, if I feel like putting in a 12-hour workday, let's put in a 12-hour workday. Let's, kind of like build on the grind, because I just know that these little ruts and these little challenges happen. And it's the same thing again with your fitness journey. If you're fired up right now, hit your macros, hit PRs, like challenge yourself, push yourself, see how much adherence you can rack up. And then if you do have an off week, an off couple weeks, whatever, you can say, hey, what are the foundational things I can hang on to? What's I don't want to say the bare minimum, but what are like kind of the things I can do to kind of hold this together and maintain, make a goal of maintaining, give myself a little breathing room, and know that I am going to come out the other side of this. We have another peak on the horizon. So where do I want to be when that fire hits again? It's probably not back where I started from. It's probably where this little rut started from, body composition wise, business wise, life wise, relationship wise, if you're married and every time you guys hit a sticking point, it's like, oh, well, this must mean the marriage is over. It's like, you're going to be starting over and go through this exact same cycle with somebody else in another year or two. You're always going to come up on those points that just feel more challenging, feel less exciting. And like, that's like the polarity of life. You can't expect linear progress in anything that you're doing.
And if you are having that or expecting that, that's normally where I think the part of like feeling defeated and failure comes in, is because you were expecting it to go a certain way, and just knowing. And there's also gonna be times where you surprise yourself. Like I went to the gym today and I was like, all right, we're just gonna like do this. And I was like, oh, we're actually like doing pretty good today. We're actually feeling pretty strong. Okay, that's great. Like there's gonna be moments of that too. So just be patient with yourself. And again, it's that every circumstance is a little bit different. So ask yourself first. And I love what you said earlier. It's like, did your priorities shift? And that's okay, but be honest with yourself about that instead of like blaming something else. Like, well, I just couldn't do this because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, you could have, at that time, you just chose to prioritize something else, and that's fine, but own that, because that's also going to help you propel back. And think about, like, again, on a journey or any kind of path, when you are set back a little bit, think of that as like a propeller to get you forward. It's like, you're like reeling back in to just like shoot to that next point. And then when you kind of fall back again, you're never going to fall down to that last point. You're going to be, like you said, where you kind of like your worst day right now will be, no, what do I want? How do I want to say this? Like, a bad day for you right now will be a good day. And then that bad day will actually be the good day that you have now. So like, that's the next step forward that you have to take. And this is me and Shelby just talking to each other about this at the same time. Just
like, you know, I think sometimes you and I put a lot of pressure on ourselves to like be super prepared, have all this value that we're delivering, like have everything like super well put together. And I think that's great. And I still want to do that. However, again, we are humans and we go through the same struggles and the same trials and tribulations. And we were talking about this on our team call yesterday, where we were like, yeah, you know, if this is us on our like worst showing up, like we're still doing pretty great because all of our clients are good. We're, you know, like our community is good. We just haven't been doing as much content creating, providing value. And we both felt kind of bad about it. But if this is my business in its worst, you know, week right now, you know what my worst was 3 years ago is like no clients.
right. Exactly.
And like struggling to complete like one Instagram post and just being riddled with anxiety and having no systems or structures. So that's the thing too, is like you on your worst day 3 years into your fitness journey is still probably a hell of a lot better. Like your baseline changes over time, right? So it's not, did your path just constantly go like this? It's more like, hey, when you hit one of those, you know, I see this with clients who have had like binge eating, you know, and things like that in the past. It's like, okay, how long did that last for in the past? Like, how many days did this go on for? How bad was it? Like, you know, whatever. It's like, okay, maybe you fell back into old habits for a day, but then you just told me you got back into it the next day, but you still feel really bad about this one day. Like, look at how much better that worst low was than it was a couple of years ago, right? Like your baseline just changes if you are progressing and being in alignment. But again, I think it's okay. I see this a lot, one with clients who have been clients before they had a baby and then been clients after they had a baby, is like expecting that in this season their adherence is somehow going to look the same as in this season. And it's like things just adapt and they change over time, and you get more in touch with like what's going to serve me now. I was a bodybuilder 5 years ago. I had goals of getting on a national stage 2 years ago. My execution and my adherence and my consistency and my food choices and just my rigidity in my fitness journey looked different. And right now I feel like I'm putting pressure on myself to maintain that same level of rigidity, even though I have completely different goals that now don't align with that same level of execution. So I also have to like make peace with that of like, hey, the way I'm living my life now is actually in line with what my new goals are. And I have to like make peace with like that season of my life was a season, but it's over. That doesn't mean I can't carry a lot of those good habits into my next season, but I don't need to expect or put pressure on myself to have the same actions if I want different goals. And it's the same thing if maybe your goal in the past was just to like get out of a bad health situation and now your goal is to lose body fat and get toned. Like those are kind of different sets of actions. So again, I think there's a mismatch sometimes when you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to be a certain way, and that certain way doesn't necessarily align with what you really want. So I think, again, kind of going back to like one, ruts are normal. Nobody's linear in anything. Everybody goes through it. Where do you want to be when the rut ends? But also, again, like, where do you want to be when the season of motivation ends? Like what is your what goal is actually in alignment with you, and making sure that your actions match your expectations versus maybe you started with us and you told us what your goals were. We gave you protocols based on those goals. And then you realize you don't actually have those goals. Like you're like, I want to compete. And now you don't. And we're pushing you like you're a competitor, you know, like be honest with yourself enough to say like, what do I actually want? And what do I actually need to do to get there? And we're kind of just, again, we're like on a little bit of a tangent right now, but this is imperfect action in action.
Really, it literally is. Yes, no, exactly. And
yeah.
the most beautiful conversations come from that, because again, there's certain things that you can plan ahead for. Like, what are we in July? So I started really like tracking and doing all that again in January. It was winter time. I was home more there, you know, that was a season then. And then as soon as summer came, like let's just say my macros weren't as rigid or like as clean as they normally are. And I was like, but you know what? I'm not really sacrificing anything. I'm still hitting my protein. Like I'm within a range. I just am not home every day to track every single thing, but I'm enjoying my summer. And at first I thought to myself, like, oh, I'm kind of in a rut where like I don't care. It's like, no, it's not that. It's just my priority shifted to being, I want to go out to eat 3 or 4 times a week with my girlfriends and like not have to be worried if I have any carbs left or whatever. So just little things like that, that also ask yourself, like, am I actually in a rut, or am I just like focused on a little bit of something else right now? But you don't have to I didn't let it go by the wayside, because I knew I also wouldn't feel my best if I just was like doing whatever. So it can be anything. But like you said, I love that. Imperfect action is still going to be action. It's going to feel a little bit different than inspired action. But you're still doing something to move the needle forward a little bit more. And then you can notice the difference of like, here's how I react and respond when I'm uninspired or feeling imperfect. Then here's how I act when I am inspired. And it's going to be 2 different things, but that's okay. That's why we're human.
Yep. And action builds momentum and action builds motivation. This is not the other way around. So us getting on here, just kind of spitballing, talking about what we've been going through. This is action that now I'm like, you know what? Oh yeah, I like talking and, being on Instagram, being on social media and like sharing my message, whatever, like, okay, we're going to build momentum. Like, okay, my house is a disaster. So I clean it. And then it's like, it feels nice in here. Let me create a vibe. I know that when I'm on my shit, I'm time blocking by the hour. I don't really want to do that right now. It feels hard. And it feels like going from tracking no macros to trying to hit a protein, carb, and fat goal the next day and hit my water and hit my steps. It feels like a little bit of a 0 to a 180. So what I'm going to do instead is from 8 a.m. to noon, I'm going to have a time block. From noon to 4, I'm going to have a time block. Like just opening it up, but starting to put myself back into motion as opposed to being in freeze. Because I think a lot of us get stuck there too, where we just kind of get stuck in freeze. And instead it's like, okay, instead of trying to do 100%, what does 50% of the most important things look like to you? And like, how can that build action? And again, changing your goals. I have clients who again went through a cutting season, had a really great successful dieting phase, and now they're in a building season and they're like, I just feel like less motivated because the results are less tangible. Like it's not as, did we drop weight this week? Are we seeing new lines? Like, here's our time frame on the cut. Building muscle is a longer process. You don't see the results as instantaneously. And so we're like, okay, hey, instead of, weighing in and, did we do this? Like, let's set some strength goals for your favorite exercises for this new split. I love shoulder presses. I want to progress shoulder presses. Where do you want to be at the end of 8, 10, 12 weeks of this split? Write that down and go in with that every single day. Just like, again, shifting the mindset of the goals that you're in for different seasons. Different seasons are going to require different types of actions and motivation. So I hope you guys enjoyed us just getting after it here, just again, talking, moving the needle forward, building momentum with our actions. So if you're in a rut right now, I think a lot of people feel that way just because it's summer again and they're kind of like I just want to like have more freedom and more fun, and that's okay. Like you can still figure out a way to not be starting over when the fall comes and you're like, ah shit, like
Right.
Cool, let's just like maintain where we were in May through the summer, and then when we're like ready to get after it again, you'll be in the exact same place. And that's a great place to be while still having some more freedom. So again, hope you guys enjoyed. Be back Monday. I think normally for our next one, you're not going to be here. So I will be doing a solo episode, I think next Monday. Is that right?
No, wait, Monday. I think Monday I'm still here. Yes.
Monday. I like it.
We'll
But if you guys have any feedback on these topics or any topics you guys want to talk about, we are always game, and we are always, again, game to have conversations with you guys and just talk about what's been going on. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this kind of takes you out of your summer slump. But we will catch you guys next time.
See you guys later.
Bye.